come to this. Now, next topic of conversation is moving to our sinks. Okay, we good? Okay, so let's move to our sinks. Sinks, really, a really important thing is sinks always come last, right? Because you want to make sure that that everything you're doing on the counter, you're going to have to sometimes pour things out into the sink, so the sink gets last. Sinks need the same thing, which is that you can't do a lid one, which means you can't do a high level of dry heat like an oven, so you're doing pouring hot water, right? Which means it needs 24 hours, and then it requires that clean. So one can do the steamer, and that would be, as we discussed in the countertops, so you're doing the steam at the highest temperature, and of course you're going backwards and forwards. You know, so you can sort of see that's the power of the steam. I personally do like doing hot water. It's a little less dangerous to do the hot water now. So we'll do the hot water on the highest of its boil after the 24 hours and going all the way through. So let's say we have our rolling boil here. You'll make sure to do it, but I want to do it all the way down of each area. So what I mean to say is that it's not just that I'm pouring at the top and it flows down. I want it to be that the boiling water is actually touching all the way down. So I'll go down and then I'll do those circles. It may take 1 or 2 times. What we do for our Pesach is we have 2 kettles boiling at the same time. So I have one kettle which is in the boil. As that one's going, the other one's getting ready. So the process is is continuing as well. Important thing when it comes to sinks is this guy gets replaced for Pesach. There's no way to help these guys as well. Obviously the racks that are in our sinks are going out and living in our section with comments. Something which is worthwhile knowing is that there are poskim, if you look in the OU guide as an example, they are concerned, like countertops, for sinks, for the concern of dry heat, which means a lot of times in our sinks we may have, let's say this is a meat sink. I'm washing up, and a hot noodle comes out. And a lot of times noodles are the things that come in sinks because that's what we do. We put the colander in the sink, we pour the water in, with the noodles into the colander, and then we shake it out. Oftentimes a noodle will fall off. That noodle touching the sink is dry heat. You can't get rid of you can't kasher dry heat with boiling water, right? You need an Eben Benes for that as well. Which is why some points, like the OU's Pesach, is you need an Eben Benes. That's very hard to do. You can't use an iron in the sink. So that would mean to say really having a stone juice heated up. In depth, that is what you'll see in the OU magazine as an example. Rav Willig does paskins that is not necessary for a sink, but that is why some people you'll still see today will still line their sinks, because it's not so simple according to all poskim to be able to do the sink properly. I noticed that a lot of people still just do the hot water and they rely on the opinion that you do not need an Emula Benes for the sink. I would recommend, if that's what you're going to do, to have a rack at the bottom for Pesach, just so that whatever you're putting into the sink is not touching directly down onto the sink, because it is not so clear that anything that's going into the sink, that the sink can be fully kasher just with this as well. So let's really recap for a second. Sinks required clean 24 hours. What we do in our kitchen is as simple. Is once we do this, we stick up a nice little sign so that the kids are not going to be touching that for 24 hours. So no heat is touching the sink. If somebody gets and washes their hands, that's not a problem because it's cold water. That's not affecting the kashrus of the sink. Right? There should not be anything hot is going into the sink for 24 hours. Then I do either my steam or my hot water. I like to do hot water for the sink, making sure that every part of the sink, all the way down and all the way on the bottom is done. Replacing the filter, and remember there is this chumrah or this perspective that is required to have an Emula Benes, which is why certainly a rack at the bottom would be required. Questions? Yeah.
Can you just take a stone from outside as your oven?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you boil it.
And you don't need to boil it; just put it on the heat, and then you take it with tongs and you would just drag it along the sides of the sink. So that just again, if one's doing it, do exceptionally carefully. It's Autumn.
What do you have to do with the faucet?
Oh, we didn't get to the faucets. Thank you so much. Yes, same thing with faucets. So the faucet also goes through the same process, which is the faucet will get washed, right, with soap, remove the filter, clean the filter, of course. And then what we'll do is with the boiling, this is not on full boil, it already took an hour, this is already 30 seconds, you want it on full boil, you'll be pouring over your faucet, that's sufficient. And that goes to the same thing with our Instant Hot as well. So let's have an Instant Hot in it. I would put the Instant Hot on, and I would do the hot at the same time. Okay? So it requires cleaning 24 hours, and then while the hot's coming out of the Instant Hot, I would also just kasher the top of it as well. Totally fun to use on Pesach as well. Okay, so that would be in order to practice. There, yeah.
So first of all, does it matter if you go top to bottom or bottom to top when pouring?
Oh, I like to go top to bottom because let's say you know my noodle or whatever else it is that's my chametz has got like just ever so small amount of taste on the side. I'm burning it out, right? I'm disinfecting. I want all that stuff to go down, so I want to come from the top to the bottom. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and you were saying like, excuse me, like when you have the water on the countertops, it drips into the sink.
Yeah.
That's okay as long as it's after 24 hours.
It's a good question. So if I'm doing
It's cool, but it's high.
yeah. That's true. I would try to avoid a situation where I am doing my counters and the hot water would be going into my sink, but the sink is in that 24-hour period, right? So I would want to not have hot water coming off of my countertops, which is kasher water, in that state. I would try to avoid that. Steam is a little easier for that. Okay? Yeah.
Should you kosher your sink first and then your counters?
I would do the opposite.
Okay.
I would kosher the counters and then the sink as well. Just being a little careful about as you talk about when you're doing steam, it's much less of an issue because the steam is very localized, so it's not really going anywhere. Yes.
Disposals, garbage disposals in the sink.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, like grinders.
Yeah. Do you use it? Do you not use it?
Good question. I mean, I don't remember. I think from my memory, I'll double check. I think from memory is that you just send it through a cycle and it's fine. You know, I don't know. I don't know if you need cleaning agent through it or not. I don't remember.
Okay.
But nothing much survives through there. But I don't remember.
Okay.
Cool.
The soap dispenser?
What was that?
The soap dispenser can be.
Oh, good question. Yeah, good question. It is possible. We personally don't. We just close up our soap dispensers and have Pesach soap dispensers. That's all we do. I don't think it's the end of the world to. Do we have a soap dispenser? Yeah, no. We just have it here. So some people have soap dispensers which sort of like are in counter, right? So when it comes to that, you could technically do hagala on those, and that'd be sufficient. We ourselves just. A lot of them are plastic, and again, there's a discussion in the halacha, is plastic kasherable during Hagala? No, you paskins b'shas hatzarech, which means to say it's not your number A choice. So for us, we just have a separate soap dispenser, our Pesach soap. Besides, it's also kosher Pesach soap, and that way it's all fine. We don't have to worry about mixing and matching and so on. But technically speaking, if you're to make sure it's kosher Pesach soap and do Hagala, and you rely on the fact that plastic could get kasher because they look like a metal, they're usually plastic dispensers that stick out of the counter, then it's fine. Okay? Will you let Lisa?
So if I wanted to kasher my sink Motzei Shabbos,
Yes.
I probably couldn't do that because I would be maybe washing hands on John.
So here's what we do. We're going to do exactly that. We're doing our cleaning Thursday night. We're going to have this basically from Friday morning to Motzei Shabbos. That's going to be our situation at our house. We're using the bathroom sinks for everything else. Come Motzei Shabbos, we've had our 24 hours, and then boom, everything's kashered. That's what we're doing. So at Sunday we have an entire day of cooking. That's the way we're going to do it, and it's actually very useful that way because then you have your 24-hour space is a time you wouldn't be using it anyway. All you need to avoid is just washing your hands. Again, washing hands, technically speaking, cold is not so much of an issue, although we generally speaking try to avoid any usage as well. But if you suddenly by mistake wash their hands, it's not the end of the world.
But if you have a crock pot going on Shabbos, you wouldn't be able to.
Yes, so good call. So we have found a different way to eat our Shabbos lunch for Shabbos because of that, because of exactly that issue. But yeah, if you have a crock pot, it's going to be more complicated. Where you're going to clean that? In the bathroom, it's not the best place to clean crock pots. So, but that's where we have to figure out a plan for that.
Dishwasher.
Yeah, I mean, if it's working.
Yeah, dishwasher.
Which brings us to.
Oh, I have a question. If you aren't using an oven furnace to do the sink, and you're being careful not to put things into the sink, that's only hot things, or it's also just like a cold item.
Cold is not an issue, but
like cereal bowl into the sink on Pesach.
That's fine. But I would just still have a rack there in general. The reason just being is because you put your cereal bowl there and somebody else puts their cup of tea, which is hard to drink. So just the things get mixed. So this way it's just safe. You're all good. And so
Okay.
yeah. Also, yeah.
Auxiliary question. The
Yes.
cleaning supplies for your sink that you use all
Yes.
year round, and you keep them under your sink, do we have to take them out and put them away for Pesach, or?
No, generally cleaning supplies are not something which is raw achilas kelet, so they're not consumable, so not an issue. The only thing is just like generally speaking, you don't want things that are kind of like coming into contact with food. being used and coming in contact with so if it's going to be cleaning supplies that are used to scrub the toilets and the sinks, like that kind of stuff, it's fine to use that. If it's going to be the kind of like dish soap, again, that's where it becomes a little more coming into contact with. I don't want to use the same dish soap I'm using, even if it is kosher, that's not a good idea.
Okay.
And then it just depends what else is living there. So if I've cleared out everything else and I'm just keeping it there, great. But if I'm going to have other things there, you don't want to be in a sold area taken out. So that just depends on the orientation of the kitchen.
Okay.
Cool? Okay.